fellowship and as a professor myself. And when I came to MIT, the atmosphere of MIT, which is really unique in the world, which allowed curiosity-based research to flourish in an environment surrounded by engineering interested in applications and entrepreneurs interested in taking those applications to the market. It's a cauldron of innovation at all levels of science, and it's just a unique place in the world. And I'm so grateful that MIT supported me through my career all these years. And there you go.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Professor Bawendi. We have our first question. Isam Ahmed of the AFP. Your line is open.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit further about that story where you flunked your first chemistry exam. And also, but since we're with AFP, we are interested in if you have any your sort of connection with France and with Tunisia as well. We'd like to hear more about those two things. Thank you.
Sure. Yes. No, it's a true story. I was a freshman at that place upriver, Harvard. I was used to just not having to study for exams. And the first exam, and the class came in, and it was in this huge room at the time with a proctor. I never had a proctor, and I just panicked. And I looked at the first questions, and I couldn't figure it out. And the second question, I couldn't figure it out. And I tried to do all the questions. And at the end, I got a 20 out of 100. It was the lowest grade in the class. And I thought, oh my God, this is the end of me here. What am I doing here? But I thought I knew the material, and I kind of did. I just didn't know how to practice for exams. And I learned how to do that. And then after that, it was, hundreds on every exam pretty much. But I figured out how to study, which I didn't know how to do before, pretty much. And my connection to France and Tunisia, my mother's French, my father is Tunisian, and I grew up in Paris, in Tunis, and in Nice. And my parents immigrated to the US when I was a boy, when I was 10 years old. And my education has been all in the US, from high school to college to graduate school.
Thank you so much. Isam, any follow-ups?
No, that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, anyone else in the room? If you have a question, please just do the raised hand. Oh, Aaron Pressman.
Hi, Aaron Pressman at the Boston Globe. Congratulations, Professor Bawendi. I was wondering if you could talk a little about how these insights came to you, how you got interested in the field of quantum dots, and kind of a little of the origin story.
So I was, yes, certainly. When I was in graduate school, I had an AT&T fellowship that supported me, and part of a fellowship was the ability or the opportunity to spend the summer working at what was then Bell Labs. And I thought that was a great idea. And my advisor at the time, Takeshioka, was kind enough to let me leave for a summer in the middle of my graduate program, which is very kind of him. And that's where I met Lou Bruce, who had just started to explain the quantum effects in these very small particles. And I discovered this whole environment at Bell Labs, which was really different from what I had known at the University of Chicago, full of physicists and condensed matter chemists and physicists. And it was a cauldron of energy and science. And so when it was time to go apply for a postdoctoral position, I couldn't wait to go back there and continue learning from Lewis and starting to build my career. And eventually I made it to MIT 2 years later.
Oh, thank you very much. The story of Bell Labs, I've been hearing that since I came to MIT too. Just amazing.
Yes. But I should point out that also when I got to MIT, our secret at MIT is our students. I mean, we have amazing students. And so my first set of students, Chris Murray, David Norris, who are co-authors on the paper that was pointed out this morning by the Nobel Committee. I couldn't have done anything without, these incredible students that we get here at MIT.
Well, and that is a wonderful segue to, we have a question from a student at MIT. So they've actually sent it in over the internet. First year student reporter with the tech. Oh, we're just moving on down the list here. Got to pull her up. Let's see, here we go. Jaya Shabari Shankar, first year reporter at MIT, writing for the Tech, MIT's student newspaper. Her question is, what is your advice for first year undergraduates leaning toward a research career?
Keep an open mind. What you're interested in now is probably going to be different than what you're actually going to be doing and be interested in later. Be flexible and be curious. Curiosity is the key to success in science.
Wonderful. And that's actually Tina. I'm going to open your line. You have a question about the process of discovery and curiosity.
Yes, congratulations. I'm Tina Say from Science News Magazine. And
I can't hear.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear.
Okay, so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you got the idea to make these quantum dots and how many tries it took you to get it right.
Okay, sure. It could be a long story, but I'll make it short. At Bell Labs, in my training was as a physical scientist, as somebody who was trying to understand the basic physics of materials and trying to understand the evolution of the basic physics as you go from the isolated atoms to having more and more of them together until you get to a big piece of material. And in order to understand that physics, which was really the motivation, we had to create the material. And so it wasn't because we wanted to make, the best quantum dots possible for application. It was because we needed to make the best possible quantum dots to study them. And so it's that need to have the material that drove us. And, there was a lot of trial and error and failure and to get to where we were. And I had made some progress in that direction when I was at Bell Labs, and when I got to MIT, pretty much nothing worked. And so we had to reinvent everything. And it's through that reinvention process that over the course of a year or a couple of years, we got to where we needed to be in terms of the quality of the material. So it wasn't really on purpose. It was really to study the physics, to make it good enough to study the physics. And that became good enough then for the further applications.
Great,
thank you.
Our next question is from Julia Robinson, Chemistry World.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Sure
I can.
Good. Well, firstly, congratulations. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm Julia from Chemistry World. I was just keen to hear on how you reflect on how this field has developed in the 30 years since your breakthrough, and what do you think the future holds for quantum dots?
Well, that's a really good question because, I'm constantly surprised when I go to conferences about the progress and the directions of the field. I think 30 years ago, none of us who started the field could have predicted 30 years later would be where we are today. It's just amazing to me. If you have really great people working on a brand new field and with brand new materials, innovation comes out in directions that you can't predict. So I would be I would be at a loss to tell you, in 10 years, where this is going to go, because I'm waiting for that surprise myself. And I'm sure I'll be surprised. And I'm sure something interesting is going to come out. It's not the end.
Thank you very much. Our next question is from Marie Alpum in Sweden. Marie?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Sure.
I can.
Yes, this is Maria Altman from Sweden. I'm working for a popular science magazine. Congratulations. I was curious about what you're doing currently in your lab when it comes to quantum dots. Could you tell us a little bit what you're working on and what you're most excited about?
Sure. So what we're interested now is the possibility of these materials being potentially applied in quantum optics and in quantum information science. 5 years ago, I didn't think that would be possible, but through the work of really talented students, it turns out that we were surprised that these could be good sources of light, of special quantum light for applications in quantum optics, not dissimilar to the kinds of work that was described in last year's physics Nobel Prize. Couldn't have predicted that 10 years ago. So that's the direction that's exciting to me right now and that we're working on.
And we actually have a couple questions in from some former students of yours.
Yes.
Professor. One is from Nicole Moody, a former graduate student. She says, I noticed Moungi is teaching 573 introductory quantum mechanics this fall. And she says there was a class today at 9 a.m. and she's wondering how it went.
It went very well, except I didn't talk about what I was supposed to talk about. Because I came up and I started talking about the history of how I got to where I am. And when I start talking like this, somehow time goes by, and 45 minutes later, I was still talking, and there you go. So I think it went in a different direction than I expected when I walked into class.
And Brian Walker, former student in your group from 06 to 11, asks, what advice would you give to people who encounter, it's a little bit of what we hear from the tech, what advice would you give to people who encounter setbacks, or even when strong and groundbreaking work isn't given its due? What is the best way to keep going?
Well, for me, it's driven by my own internal curiosity, and setbacks are just part of research. They're part of life, and you got to keep trying and doing what's interesting for you. And I remember at the beginning, my first set of students, we were at a conference, and they told me this after the fact. There were only 2 groups in the whole conference that were interested in the material, and they thought, oh, did we make a mistake? Nobody else seems to be interested in this. But so you've got to have some confidence in understand that what you're doing is interesting to yourself.
Wonderful. Okay, we have one in the room now. Freelance journalist Bree Barbu, your line is open.
Actually, from Chemical and Engineering News. I'm not sure why it's
so sorry. You should. Sorry, Bree.
I mean, my question is the same regardless, and also congratulations. So many of the prizes that we've seen this week have, owed to interdisciplinary science. So I was hoping you could sort of speak on the importance of crossing disciplinary boundaries in making discoveries.
Absolutely. And this is why MIT is such a wonderful place to be, where all the disciplines are melded together in the same buildings, and it allows for cross-pollination, and you can just walk down the hall and bump into a material scientist or a chemical engineer or electrical engineer or what have you. So, and this is so important. And that's why Bell Labs at the time was such a wonderful place, because it combined all these disciplines together. And that was the key to their innovation at the time. It's the key to innovation here at MIT as well. And so, being motivated by seeing other works across the institute, learning about other works. I've learned so much about different disciplines, not just through the application of the material, but through my colleagues at MIT. I've learned about biology, medicine, electrical engineering, optics, and part of the why I keep doing what I'm doing, at the beginning was the curiosity of the material, but now I'm just interested in science in general, and learning about all these really incredibly interesting fields is just it's a reward to me. It's just a reward to be here and learning all that stuff.
Wonderful. And we also have a question from the internet from Emily Petrozelli, reporter for Chemical Engineering Process. She asks, the applications for quantum dots are numerous and the potential nearly limitless. What application has most excited or surprised you?
Well, I think I would say, first of all, that any application was surprising, from the beginning. So we didn't really expect applications at the beginning. It was really, why is the world the way it is? I guess it's surprising to me that, the scale at which manufacturing of quantum dots has evolved, and that it's, at a scale where all these displays have dots in them. I would never have thought that you could make these things at such a large commercial scale and have them inexpensive enough that you could incorporate them and that they would actually make a difference in the consumer area. I really didn't expect that.
Well, that kind of goes nicely into a question from another former student of yours, co-founder of QD Vision, Seth Coe-Sullivan.
Yes.
He asks you, what's next for QDs? After displays and bioimaging, what do you think is the next industry your inventions will disrupt?
So Seth, great question. As Seth knows, we're not very good at predicting the future. I wish I had a crystal ball. I know what I'm interested in, but that doesn't mean that that's going to be the next big thing. Somebody else probably has that idea somewhere else. I'm interested in the really basic quantum mechanics of the material and how they could be applied in quantum optics right now. Whether or not that will lead to something in 5 to 10 years or longer, I don't know. Time will tell.
Speaking of time, another former postdoc with you until 2018, now an assistant professor at FSU, Leah Nienhaus. Congratulations, Moungi. Thank you for being a positive figure in the field. Please continue to inspire us. What was your favorite part of the scientific journey to where you are now?
So my favorite part, I think, is something that I already mentioned, is really the learning about all these different areas of science that we're able to touch with quantum dots. To me, that's just incredible to be able to touch so many fields and to learn about them and to see how we could contribute in those areas. To me, that's been an incredible journey.
Wonderful. So I see a few journalists who've already asked questions. Tina, I've unmuted you. Did you have a follow-up or is your hand just still up? Ditto, Marie and Julia.
Yes, I have a question.
Marie?
I was wondering if you had time to reflect how the Nobel Prize will influence you as a scientist and as a person.
Well, that's a really easy question. No, I have not had time to reflect on that at all.
No comment? What was your reaction when you got
my
the
reaction
message?
was extremely surprised, humbled and shocked and wow. And then it's been kind of a roller coaster since then. So I know I have not had time to reflect on that at all.
But you think it will influence you? You will.
Well, every event in your life influences you in some way, but I just don't know how.
Wonderful. And then, we are going strong from the internet. So journalists, just a reminder to hit raise hand if any of those of you in the room haven't been able to ask a question and have one. And we'll just take one quickly from Kevin Johnson, senior lecturer at MIT Sloan School of Management. He says, you mentioned places the emphasis MIT places on, let's see, let me read him correctly. You mentioned the value MIT places on commercialization of research. Can you talk a bit about how you were able to help commercialize your research and that journey? Thank you.
Well, MIT values every aspect of the scientific endeavor, including basic science, which is why, we're able to do what we can do in the School of Science. And it's also incredibly rewarding to have Sloan School and the innovation milieu that we have here, including commercialization. I forgot what the question was now. But
he asked you to talk about your.
So it's the students that drive it. As a professor, I have a day job that I love, but the students, including Seth, who was one of the questionnaires, who co-founded QD Vision, they're the ones that are the drivers for taking the work that we've done here and bringing it out to the commercial world. So again, it's the importance of your students, your students and postdocs, because we couldn't do anything without them.
Okay, again, we have one follow-up from Isam Ahmed, AFP, and then other journalists, do raise your hand. We'll be getting to about last question here in a minute, if either from the broader public viewing or those of you in the room.
Yes, Professor. I was just wondering if you how well you knew Louis Bruce. Did you work with him at Bell? What was your relationship like with him? And did you have any connection at all with Alexei Ekimov? Obviously he was on the other side of the Iron Curtain, at least until the 80s. Or did his writings influence you in some way? And again, sorry, just to go back to that very first story about flunking out the first exam, what sort of lessons did that impart on you? And do you think there's something that can be universalized from that?
Well, going back to the flunking out, perseverance. You have a setback, but you can persevere and overcome this and learn from your experience, which obviously I did. But not to let it destroy you. It could easily have destroyed me, that first experience with an F, the lowest grade by far in that class, and I could have just decided this wasn't for me. But I liked what I was doing, and so I learned how to become successful as a student. Lou Bruce was my mentor. He was my postdoctoral mentor, and I am very indebted to him. He launched my career. I learned everything about the quantum dots from his own discoveries, and certainly we keep in touch. I was at his 80th birthday celebration earlier this summer, along with many former students at Columbia. It was a wonderful place, wonderful time to see him. I forgot what the other question was. Ekimov. So I have met Ekimov a few times, but as you mentioned, at the time in 1982 or 83, when Lou Bruce and Ekimov, working along with Sasha Efros, a colleague of his, who's now also in the US and the stalwart of the field, they were working in the former Soviet, what was then the Soviet Union, and the literatures of the two places wasn't easy to find out what was going on, right? And so the thing about science is that sometimes things are just ready for it, so they became ready for the discoveries in the Soviet Union and the US at the same time. And the papers that Louis wrote and that Ekimov wrote with Sasha Efros, they appeared the same year. One in the Soviet press, the Soviet journals, and the other one is the American US journals. And to me, that's like really amazing that science works like that.
So we have a very fun one to end on, and we have one that's coming in through the internet from a colleague at the AFP. They are asking, their sound isn't working. They're asking, Professor, do you speak any French?
I do speak French, yes. That's my native language.
They would like to know if you would say in French how you felt after the award, and a little bit about your work.
Oh, my French is very rusty. C'était une très grande surprise d'avoir ce coup de téléphone ce matin, à 4h30 du matin. J'étais complètement endormi. Ma femme m'a dit, qu'est-ce qui se passe? Qu'est-ce qui se passe? Et je sais pas, je sais pas. Et puis je lui ai dit, ah, ça vient de Stockholm. Alors c'était vraiment, vraiment une très grande surprise ce matin.
Thank you very much for that. And now we are getting just lovely tributes from all over the place, former students, former colleagues, and we'll collect those and send those to you. But we'll end on a kind of a fun one. I think you'll like it. From David Lee, Lumicell and Precision Healing co-founder, along with you, asks, do you still get your creative ideas while jogging?
Well, you know, I'm a little older now and I have a hip problem and I can no longer jog, but I bicycle and I do all sorts of other things. I rock climb and, you know, I get, especially with climbing and hiking. I also do ice climbing. You know, I get energized. You know, it's a way to focus your brain, to get out of the everyday stress and focus your brain, and things come out when you're able to do that.
Well, thank you. Thank you again to everyone gathered to celebrate this exciting moment. Thank you, President Kornbluth. Thank you, Professor Bawendi, and congratulations once again to you and your fellow laureates. That will wrap us up here today. Thank you, everyone.